Hey, welcome to our third tutorial on JavaScript. For this lesson, we're going to be going over variables, statements, and different data types. Yeah, let's get typing our JavaScript. A variable is used to store information, like let's say if you want to store the width of a box or the height of a box, and then later on you can create a formula to multiply width times height, and then you get the area, right? The reason variables are good to store information is that um, they are variables, so they can change. Let's say if you want to hold a number in let's say, your wallet. Let's say your wallet has $5, and then maybe later it'll have $8, so the variable will take on the new value of 8. And let's get to typing. So when you first create a variable, you're going to want to declare it. So declaring it means telling JavaScript that it's a variable. And let's say you want the variable width. And then going over another thing, a statement. Each line of code, or the beginning to the end, and this whole encompassing beginning to end part of code is called a statement. And in this statement, we're just declaring a variable, and that's the end of the statement. It's pretty much just it's like one part of the recipe, like step 2, step 3, step 4. Each step is its own separate statement, and each statement always ends with a semicolon. So you're gonna want to end every statement with a semicolon, and we'll go more into that later. But it's good to just get in the habit of doing this. So yeah. And after you've declared the variable, you can set it a value. So let's give it the width equals to, let's say, 5. Let's say, pretend that's like 5 inches. And let's declare another variable. Let's declare a variable called height. And then let's give this a value of 6. Alright, and now that width will have a value of 5, and height will have a value of 6. And then when you want to, let's say, calculate the area, you want to make your own calculator, we're going to declare the variable area. And now you could, we're going to go more into this later about assignment operators and the math, but you can do, let's say, area equals to width, and you're going to use the asterisk, which is a multiplication sign, times height. And what this will do is when the variable is being called within the equation, it's going to take on the value of 5. And then when you call on the height, it's going to take on the value of 6. And then 5 times 6 is area after this statement is going to be equal to 30. Alright? And yeah. And let's say you change it before the variable is called in this equation. Let's say width is now equal to 10. This calling to this variable, it's going to be 10. It's not going to be 5. It's going to be 10 because it was the last change. It had the last word in changing the variable, because it's line 8 and the original one was line 5. So the line 8 will take dominance over it. Yeah. Let's go over some different data types, different types of variables. First, there's of course the number. So you can do like var. You can do price is equal to 5. That's a number data type, a numeric data type. And variables can also be something called strings, which are like words. And say var name equals John. This is going to be a string. And strings are always enclosed in either double quotes or single quotes. We'll go over the differences in that later, but either one can be used as of now. And yeah, when you're going to be manipulating this variable, it's going to spit out a string, and a string is a sequence of different characters. So this is going to be J separate, O separate, H separate, oops, H separate, and N is going to be kind of separate. Like pretend they're in their own separate boxes. And when you're calling this variable, it's going to bring in these series of characters. Another data type is called the Boolean data type. Boolean is pretty much either true or false. It has to take one of these values. And it's like a type of switch, like a switch in your house. Let's say if it's like the switch is down, it means off, and up is on. So you're pretty much just programming a switch. So let's say var, let's say, well, this is a bad example because switch is actually important for later, but let's just do button. And this button is going to be equal to true, which is highlighted in blue here. Now let's say for later, if you're testing for a certain condition, let's say, is it hot outside, and the button variable, if it reads true, then you're gonna do a different set of instructions, and if it's false, you're gonna do another different set of instructions. And yeah. As you see here, this is a before I showed you that you declare it first, and then you can set it a value later. It's up to you really. Some people, you can do this, but the shorthand way, of course, is to do the new way I did it, is to just set it in the same line. But sometimes you won't have a value for it at that point in the program, so you're going to want to set it later. Let's say that it hasn't been set yet, and you need to calculate something before the variable is actually set. Let's say like the area. In the previous example, the area wasn't really set until height and width were multiplied by each other. And yeah, and let's go over some rules of variables. A variable, first rule, it must begin with either a $sign, a underscore, or a letter, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, alphabet. And rule number 2, it can contain letters, dollars, or an underscore, but you can't use like dashes or like or periods. The usual convention of variables is that usually if you have multiple words in a variable, let's say like dark alley, this is called a camel casing. The second word in the variable name is usually capitalized, and the first word is usually always lowercase. So you can have dark alley, ghetto, and this word, all the following words will have to have will not have to, but it's usually convention. It's a good thing to get in the habit of. Yeah. Rule number 3, you can't use like reserved keywords, like you can't use like true, because true is reserved for Boolean variables, and like switch, like remember we're trying to use switch, but that was a bad example because switch is used, it's reserved for a different part of its program, a different part of the JavaScript programming language. Yeah. And rule number 4, JavaScript variables are case sensitive, so score is going to be different from score. These are both fine. Oops, changed. These are both fine variables, but if you're trying to reference them and you change them somewhat later in the code, JavaScript is able to differentiate score lowercase and score uppercase, so they will not be the same. So you want to be careful with that. Rule number 5, for naming variables, you'll want to usually be descriptive about them. So if you're trying to create a variable of someone's first name, you usually want to name it like first name. This will be really important. It's not only important to you as a programmer, it's important when you're collaborating, and people are going to know what's going on in your code. You want to be as descriptive as possible. Alright, and that should be all for our data types for this tutorial, and we'll be going over another data type called arrays in the next tutorial. Yeah. and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.